Hi. So in this session, we want to add the attributes to all of our objects without we having to specifically add them to each and every individual object, right? We just want that every student that is created should have some particular attributes, and we should not have to add them to each and every object that we are going to create. Okay, that was the whole point of classes and objects, right? So what we really want is that this is the student template, right? This is the class. When I create S1, it should already have name and roll number. When I create S2, it should already have a name and roll number. When I create S3, it should also have a name and a roll number attribute with it. Okay, perfect. Now, how can we do that? So there is a very important function that we can write here, which will allow us to do this. Okay. So whenever you say S1 is equals to student, what happens is, whenever you say S1 is equals to student, what happens is object is created that we call S1, right? We create this object. Once this object is created, this object is actually passed on to a function within the class, that is the init function, right? We have an init function, special function, that is being called right after the object is created for you. So first the object is created, and then that object is passed on to the init function. And this init function is a perfect place for us to assign all these attributes. Whatever attributes we want to create, we can do within this init function. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. So now I'll be writing this init function, so I don't need this pass statement anymore, because I'll be writing some code here. How do I define a function here? You simply write init, and this is how you can define a function. Now our init function actually takes an argument with it. What is this argument? As I mentioned, whenever you say this, an object is created and then init is called, and this object is passed along in the init call. So init gets an argument, and that argument is the object that you want. So for example, I could have said obj here, right? That is the object that is getting created is being passed to me. But I'll not call it obj because there is a very strong convention in Python that this object we call self. It's not required, it's not compulsory, but it's a very strong convention. Anybody writing Python code generally calls it self. So this kind of means that the object which is getting created, that is being passed here, that is being passed to this function. We call it self. Okay, so what is this self? This is basically, you have this S1 which has the address of this object. Similarly, self also has the address of exactly the same object. So the way I was able to say S1.name is equals to something, similarly I can say self.name is equals to something, and it'll do the same thing, right? So S1 and self both are references to the same object. So I'll say self.name is equals to, let's say ABC. For now, I'm just giving the name ABC. And let's say we add another thing, let's say the roll number. So right now I'm giving the roll number to be 12. Perfect. So what am I saying? What should happen here? When I say S1 is equals to student, a student is created, and that is passed here, right? That is passed here. Now within this function, you are making this object, you are creating two attributes for this object. One is name, one is roll number. And finally, when S1 will have reference to this, this object already has these two attributes with it. So to check this, let's look at the dictionary, the attribute dictionary that we have seen in the last session. So now we have name as well as roll number. So our S1, the student, has the name as well as the roll number. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed, right? There is only one catch here. If I create student 2, that is S2, so I'm creating another student, what do you think are the attributes present now? The same, right? Because when you call this function, again, an object will be created, that will be passed here, and that object's name will become ABC and the roll number will become 12, right? So if you look at S2.dictionary, what will happen is it will have exact same attributes as S1. So both these objects have the same attribute. They are two different objects. So if you print S1 and S2, they are two different objects, right? One is present at this address, the second is present at a different address. These are two different objects, but they happen to have the same attributes. Now that's not very useful, right? Because whenever I want to create a student, I would want to give them a unique name and a unique roll number. If I want to create Ankush and I want to give roll number as 12, and if I want to create Rohan and I want to give roll number as 13, then I want these values to be assigned to that student. Okay, so if I want S1 to have name Ankush and roll number 12, one thing that I can obviously do is I can set the name to be Ankush once I have created the object already, and set the roll number to be 13. Okay, now our dictionary's attributes have been updated, and I can do the same thing for S2. I can say Rohan, and I can give it 13. Sorry, I wanted this to be 12. Right? And S2 has the required, sorry, this should have been S2, has the required roll number and the name. But that sounds very stupid to me. The whole point of creating the init method was that I should not have to do this for every time I create an object. So instead what you can do is, so instead of setting these values after the object is created, after the object is returned, you can pass these values to the init function. Okay? So ideally, what do I want? I think I want this to run in a way such that when I'm creating the student, I should be able to pass the name and the roll number here itself. That, hey, I want a student which should have this name and this roll number. And I should not have to set the name and roll number values later on. So if this call sets the required name and the roll number, that would be amazing. That'll be perfect. And that's exactly what you can do. That's exactly what you can do. So I'll change these cells later on, but ideally what I want is I want that I should be able to do something like this. I should be able to create a student which has the name and roll number as specified while I'm creating that student. But if I run it, that's going to give me an error. It's saying that init takes only one argument, but 3 were given. Wow, 3? I've given only 2 arguments. Why is it saying 3 arguments were given? So it's saying 3 because by default init takes this self as argument, that is the object being called. And if you have 2 more arguments that you're passing while creating the object, these 2 are passed to init as well. So as soon as you added these 2 arguments, they are being passed to init as well. So init had 3 arguments. So if you want this to work, what you need to do is, you need to change your init function. Instead of taking self, just self, you should take the name and you should take the roll number as well. And here, instead of setting it to be ABC, what I should say is, hey, this object's name should be the name that is passed to me. So name. And this object's roll number should be the roll number that is passed to me. Now, once you have this and you try to run this, this will work perfectly fine. Now, if you look at S3's dictionary, this is exactly what we want. Now, S3 has the attributes as we needed them. But as soon as you do this, what will happen? Now, this will be a problem, right? This will be a problem. Because if you run this, it is saying, you just passed 1 argument to init, it needs 2 more. That is, it requires name and the roll number as well. So now when I'm creating a student, I need to pass the name and the roll number, which is perfect, right? That's what I wanted to do. So I want to pass Ankush and 12 here, then I don't have to set these 2 separately. This will create the object for me with this name and this roll number. And dictionary has exactly the data that I needed. Similarly for Rohan, let's pass Rohan and 13. And now I didn't have to set these values, and that's automatically what the second object has, right? So init is an amazing function, extremely useful. What I'm able to do is, if I'm creating a student, as soon as you define this init, first of all, now if anybody wants to create a student object, or object of student class, they will have to pass 2 arguments. First is the name, second is the roll number. That sounds like a really good requirement from my side, right? What I'm saying is, hey, you want a student? Give me the name and roll number, then I'll give you a student. And that student will already have the name and roll number set for you, right? So if you want to create a student, pass these 2 things to me and your student will be ready. Okay, perfect. So using this init method, what I'm able to do is, now whenever I create a student object will have 2 attributes consistently. All students will have these 2 attributes and their values will be assigned as per your requirement. Whatever values you pass, I'll set those values to your student object. Okay, so init is an amazing function that you will be using all the time. Whenever you're writing any class, you will be using init in one way or the other. Okay, perfect. Please practice a little bit with this. You can try building another class. Maybe you can create a batch class or whatever kind of class that you like, and that'll help you understand things a little bit. Perfect. Thank you.